Welcome to Free Conference. Please enter your access code or PIN followed. You will now enter the conference. Muted.
All right. Well, Gabe's on now.
Hey,
Gabe.
Levi. Hey, what's going on?
Hello, Gabe. That's his recording line, so he's probably getting that set up right now.
Yeah, I'm recording from this phone right here.
And I forget who 702 is, but I've seen that number before. Okay. Anyway, let's go ahead and get this rolling.
702 is Nicholas, I believe.
Okay. All right, so we're going to begin now. We're going to start at the top. Greetings from PAC, that's People's Awareness Coalition, PAC. People's, as in everyone in America, awareness as in political and constitutional understanding, and coalition meaning lawful nationals working together. All right, so PAC's purpose is that of an educational tool to get Americans up to speed on the current condition of the government, the problems, and more importantly, the remedy. By working together with PAC, we will effectively help each other implement the remedy in our own lives. Before this presentation began, I was explaining a little bit that the remedy, more specifically, is an administrative process of expatriation in favor of nationality de jure or nationality to a state. Here's the mission statement as it appears inside the book, which I'm probably going to paraphrase in some of my later edit versions of this. Anyway, the mission statement goes, the People's Awareness Coalition discerns that vigilance and an understanding of the law are paramount to the preservation of liberty. As a result, the coalition commits to increasing Americans' awareness of the designed legal fraud perpetrated against them and their countries and resolves to instruct people of America in the appropriate historical facts and law. So we said countries in there. I'll just take a little break from going through with the rest of it. The designed legal fraud perpetrated against them and their countries. What we mean by that is the states, because in technical law, the states are countries. They all have their own constitution, and they follow all the other criteria to being classified as a country as according to the law of nations. Anyway, the ultimate goal of the coalition is to reestablish the American Union's lawful republican governmental system as set forth by the organic constitution. Coalition members are therefore patriotically motivated in support of liberty and firmly believe that wars and rebellions are the two most destructive diseases of society. Hence, the coalition resolves to accomplish its goals in a political and peaceful manner. So we, as a group, are never outspoken about outward action or violence of any kind. And the only type of action that we take is administrative action and actually like asserting your rights and acting in good faith and giving notices and stuff like that, so that you can pretty much let all these people in official office or official positions. So you're acting in good faith. You're being forthright with what your intentions are. You're not seeming to try to do something on the fly, basically. So we mentioned what's the problem. Of course, I think everybody that would be on this call understands that there's a fundamental problem with the governmental system that we have going on here in the United States. And so what exactly is the problem? Well, there's a lot of problems that a lot of different people pay attention to, and people tend to kind of go off in their own directions because they see different things as different priorities. But we all know that there's a whole list of grievances that we would have that are legitimate, that we could raise against the governmental system that we have. The crux of the problem, we believe, in this group, though, is the overreaching federal government, the out-of-control federal government, its unjustified amount of power. So we want to explore how can we bring that federal government back into its intended function, not to abolish the federal government, not as an anarchist would want to abolish the federal government or abolish all governments, but to bring it back into its intended limited function. We believe that that's the way that the founders envisioned everything, and that's the way we want to kind of go back to that, to a point, I guess, when federal government was a little bit more limited. So as we go through this presentation, where we begin will be, well, first, I'll ask some questions. They're hypothetical questions, rhetorical questions. But it's to get you to think a little bit. In order to experience less anxiety about a complex or troubling subject, it's important to better understand that subject. And that's why we're here, obviously, to gain powerful knowledge that will help us to correct the fundamental problems. So some of those rhetorical questions are, how many of you would like to better understand why things are the way they are? Of course, everybody wants to understand why things are the way they are. Why does it seem like they, the acronym meaning the hierarchy enslaving you, why does it seem like they just make up the rules as they go? Why are so many people actually afraid of the government? And how many of you would like to feel more secure? Well, I think the reason that so many people are afraid of the government is actually answered by the previous question. It seems like they can do whatever they want. So that's why I feel a lot of people feel oppressed or persecuted or just, feel discontent about the situation. They feel some fear when they think about the federal government. Well, as we get on through this presentation, we're going to find that really the true understanding of the nuances of the definitions in legal speak and stuff is really where you can really gain a lot of insight and you can gain a lot of knowledge. So where we begin with this presentation is by pointing out that in language today, we use a lot of words that are not used the same as they are in the law and when laws are being written. So it's important to make that distinction and to actually define some of the more important words so that you can start to begin to see how the language and how the laws were constructed in a way so that they work off of each other to achieve a certain goal. The first and the most important, let me first go through, I guess, and say we're going to be going over a lot of different definitions of things. And some of them include citizen, status, power, the order of nature, rights, privileges, legal versus lawful, and other things like that. The very first one that we should pay attention to, which is the most important one with regard to what People's Awareness Coalition is trying to do, is status. The reason that this word is the most important is because this is what we focus on to help unlock people basically from the system. Status basically means the legal standing of a position of a person in society. It's like a class, your class. Some examples would be a child or a parent, married or unmarried, servant or master. In Roman times, they had the praetorian class, they had the plebeian class, and they had other various classes there. And with regard to People's Awareness Coalition, what we're looking at is citizenship status. So a little bit about citizen. Okay, so a citizen defined is a person who owes allegiance to a government and presumably is being protected by it. So we can see that from lots and lots of different speeches and lots of different founding documents and things, that, as Abraham Lincoln said at the Gettysburg Address, this is supposed to be, or presumed to be, government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Now, which people was he talking about? That's up for debate. But in essence, what we understand, what you're led to understanding from this quote, is that the government is made up of the people and that it is working for the people. And so it's our belief in the People's Awareness Coalition that the citizen bears some responsibility for the actions of the government. After all, they are part of what constitutes the government, and by their contributions and acquiescence, they empower the systems that form. Taking this principle into account, we have determined that invoking the inherent right to remove oneself from an objectionable system is the single most effective way of disempowering it. So as opposed to going out and rioting, starting fights, or screaming, or protesting, or sitting in, or doing any of things like that that can actually put your physical body into danger, what we do is we do an administrative process of actually, in a legal sense, removing yourself from the system and you actually technically become dead to the system. They can no longer use your numbers, and you basically are inactive a piece of former property at that point. So the citizens, another thing to kind of bridge into the next point is that when people gather together and they have allegiance to a common nation or a common group or whatever, obviously that group amasses more power because they have more people that are claiming that, that status. So we want to go on now a little bit and talk about power, and we want to talk about what it is in a raw sense and what it is in a legal sense. So in a raw sense, power is either energy or the ability to control others' energy, right? And so a parent should have power over the child, not the child having power over the parent. That would be kind of like a maxim. That's like a universally understood truth, that the parent should have power over the child, not the child having power over the parent. Another way to say this would be the creation is never more powerful than the creator. And that is actually an ancient maxim in common law. You could say it's sort of like a backbone principle that laws are based on, the writing of laws is based on. Okay, so when it comes to government, we want to talk about legitimate power. How do governments gain legitimate power? Well, legitimate power with regard to government comes from consent. And we can find this actually in the Declaration of Independence, where it says, governments derive their just power from the consent of the governed. Just meaning legitimate or verified. Okay, so power comes from consent. All right, and basically when a bunch of people amass together into a certain nationality or into a certain group or whatever, obviously that group gains in power. All right, so as we move on, let's talk about the order of nature. The order of nature would basically be how power how power flows down through different things. So if you're talking about a big company, you've got CEO, and then you've got the CEOs, you've got the board of directors, you've got the president, vice president, then you've got managers below them, then you've got hourly employees, and so on down the line. So that would be sort of like one example of how power can flow through a system. What we're talking about with regard to the law and regard to rights and everything is a little bit different. But we'll get to that in a second. So the order of nature, a little bit more about the order of nature. Another maxim of common law, basically, again, maxims being universally understood truths or accepted truths, would be that the law, the next maxim we're going to see here is the law regards the order of nature. That is from Black's Law Dictionary. I'm sure it's found other places, but that was taken from Black's Law Dictionary. And so we talk about the law regarding the order of nature and all that stuff. So we're talking about lawfulness, or like de jure law, or like things like the order of nature as defined by considered an orderly system and subject to natural laws, not human or supernatural laws. So that would basically be kind of the way things fall together naturally, right? Then we can go a little bit further and look at sort of we'll illustrate it here a little bit. Before the Constitution was written, in ancient law or in common law, ancient civilizations considered the following to be the true order of nature. So whether you believe in God or not, God is at the hierarchy, is at the top of the hierarchy of power as the Almighty Sovereign, and that can be evidenced by another quote from the Declaration of Independence, which we'll get into a little bit later on. But anyway, so God is the Almighty Sovereign. God cedes some power or rights to individuals, and then those individuals, through free association, form groups or states that they are allowed to leave at any time if they no longer find that their ideology aligns with that group, or for whatever reason, they are allowed to leave. It's free association. Then, in our case, domestically here, those groups or states formed the federal government. They unionized and they formed the federal government. And again, it was a voluntary sort of undertaking. They got together voluntarily. This is what's known as individualism, where the rights and the happiness of the individual are considered more important than the collective. And so there was a vote, and there was a lot of deliberations, and there was a lot of talks and everything about federalization, the Federalist Papers, the Anti-Federalist Papers. There's a lot of arguments for and against it all. And that happened a long time ago before, obviously, federalization happened, before the Constitution was conceived. But essentially it happened, but it happened voluntarily. So basically these concepts are kind of like pointing at where your rights come from and how they kind of are maintained. And so here's this quote that I referenced a little bit earlier. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I guess assumed among that would be property too. A lot of people feel like that should have been put in there. But there's a couple different things that I'd like to point out in here. Okay, so whether or not you believe in God or not, the gentlemen that wrote this sentence here did. They believed in the Creator of some kind. Obviously, it's not denominational. So we're not saying endowed by their Christian Creator or whatever. So, but they believed that there was a Creator. There was some sort of higher power there. And they believed that by crediting these natural human rights with something that was higher or more powerful, that it would be accepted that basically that these rights are granted and they can't be taken away. So that is evidenced by the fact that we see then unalienable in that same sentence. Endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. And unalienable means impossible to take away or give up permanently. Okay, so we've gone through a bunch of different definitions up to this point, but what does it all mean and what exactly changed? If we're given unalienable rights and our system is supposed to be set up in a way where free association is key in order for groups to form and for governments to have legitimate power, what exactly changed? Okay, well, if we look a little bit further and we read between the lines, we'll see that your rights can't be taken and they can't be given up permanently, but you can decide not to value them and you can not protect them, basically. And in essence, you will give them up voluntarily. That's the only way. So but they are always there, actually waiting for you to wake up. There's another interesting maximum, that goes, the law may sleep but never dies. Okay, so we're talking about lawfulness there. The difference between lawfulness and legal is that, lawfulness kind of conforms with nature and the sort of the way that things kind of flow through common law, and legal is different in the sense that basically a group of guys could get together and say, well, we want to put some restrictions on this, basically this right that up until now was, always considered to be untouched or uninfringed. But we want to change that a little bit because, we need to keep people safe, or because people's feelings get hurt when other people say mean things or whatever. So we're going to change the rules a little bit. And that's legal versus lawful. Okay, and I could probably come up with some better examples, which I'm going to put into this presentation later on. But anyway, so rewind a little bit. What changed? You can't. The rights can't be given up. They can't be taken away. they can be given up permanently or voluntarily, rather. They can be given up voluntarily. So what exactly happened? All right, that's where we start to talk about the 14th Amendment. This is where the real core and the meat and the potatoes and everything are. The Red Amendment, again, the book written by L.B. Bork, it talks about mainly the 14th Amendment. It also talks about the 13th and the 15th a little bit, but mainly focuses on the 14th Amendment. Why? Well, because in the first section of the 14th Amendment, the complex language in the 14th Amendment created for the very first time in history ever a status called United States citizen or citizen of the United States. It means basically the same thing. Prior to this, all the individuals in the many states were members of their states. So you can imagine there was a bunch of different separate teams, okay? They all had their own autonomy to a degree, and they dealt together. They basically associated together freely, and they used the federal government, the structure and the framework of the federal government to arbitrate disputes between the states, to facilitate commerce abroad, and probably some other things, to levy tariffs and things like that on imports and things. So the federal government was functioning as it was intended to prior to this amendment being passed, or, however you want to call it, rammed through. The amendment created, again, the status called United States citizen. So what exactly did that do? Well, basically by saying everyone that's born in all the many states now is primarily a United States citizen, and secondarily they're a citizen of their state. What does that do? Well, if we look at the principles that we were kind of talking about before in the call, every person that calls themselves a Virginian or a Texan or a United States citizen, or even talk about baseball teams, I'm talking about the Orioles or the Pirates or whatever. Okay, the more people that do that, the more powerful that group becomes, or at least seems to become, right? So if the United States, the federal government, imposes citizenship status on everybody in every state, what exactly happens to all those states? They literally get sucked dry of all their power because all their people have suddenly become United States citizens. Because in a legal sense, in law, legally speaking, they're separate. The states are separate from the federal government. They're foreign to one another. Okay? So when you talk about the status of United States citizen being created and then imposed at birth on everybody that's born, what happens is literally all the power gone from all the states. Okay? The phrase later on in the section 1 of the 14th Amendment, the phrase privileges and immunities shows up. Okay, it basically says that no state shall make any law that infringes on the privileges and immunities. I'm paraphrasing, probably butchering it. Anyway, privileges and immunities is mentioned. Rights is not mentioned. There is a difference between privileges and immunities and rights. There is a difference. Privileges are something that are given to you. Your parent tells you, okay, you have the privilege to watch TV after dinner. Okay, if you don't do your homework, then you don't get that privilege, right? That's something that can be taken away. That's a flexible attribute, okay? Rights are not the same thing, okay? You have the right to keep yourself alive. You have the right to defend yourself. You have the right to try and make your station in life better. You have the right to try to make yourself comfortable. Okay, you have those rights. Your parents can't take those rights from you, or shouldn't try to. Okay, so those are rights. Rights are things that are inherent that can't be taken away. Privileges and immunities are granted by a higher power, and it's assumed that power could basically change those attributes or suspend or ignore them at any time. Okay, so it's not very good to have privileges and immunities versus rights. Okay, further on, the 14th Amendment ignores the order of nature because, after all, the federal government was a creation of the states, okay? And the states were created by the people in the states. The federal government then, basically through corrupt people in the federal government, created a status and then imposed it on all the many people of all the many states, okay, and put itself above them, all right? It was dictating down then. It was saying, no state shall do this, no state shall do that. That right there dissolved the 10th Amendment, okay, when the federal government started dictating this. So you can see basically that the federal government at that point made a huge power grab, but the people didn't really notice it because I imagine they were still mind spinning from the war that just happened and all the hundreds of thousands of people that died, cousin killing cousin, brother killing brother, families torn apart. Terrible, terrible, horrible, awful thing to happen between the states and between the people in the states, right? Another thing is that education wasn't what it could have been, or what it, there wasn't a lot of people that probably understood exactly what was going on, okay? So the amendment ignores the order of nature. It installs the federal government, and the federal government actually installs itself essentially into the place where God would have been, right, at the very top of the hierarchy, and creates what's known as de facto government. De facto government, that means of fact. It's basically legal speak, you know what I mean? Because the law was written, the fact is there now. And so this is the way we're going to do that. Okay, so that means de facto, that is man's law, that is man's decree, that is man's triumphing over a natural system. You could say that is man's triumphing over God, right? Or man trying to. I shouldn't say triumphing, but man's attempt to emulate God, I should say. Okay, so the natural way that things would be flowing would be called de jure. Okay, that's de jure government. That would be where, since I'm born in Virginia, I have a birthright to Virginia. I have a right to be here. They can't deport me from Virginia because I have a birthright here. I am a de jure national of the state of Virginia now. Okay, so they can't really put me anywhere. If Virginia doesn't like me for whatever reason, then they just have to deal with it, I guess. But that would be de jure status versus de facto. Again, that's legal versus lawful. Okay, the lawful way of things that are supposed to flow is how I mentioned before when we were talking about the order of nature above, before with God, then individuals, then groups, then federal government. Okay, so the amendment ignores the order of nature, we already did that. All right, so what's the new order? The new order, or people like to say new world order, it hasn't really quite gotten there yet, but the new order would be federal government in our case here. Federal government is at the hierarchy, is at the top of the hierarchy of power. They obviously are dictating to the states what they can and can't do. And then the states are dictating then to the individuals so far on down the line, and God is omitted from this structure. This is what's known as collectivism, and this is where the group is always considered more important than the happiness and well-being of the individual. And obviously, people in bureaucratic positions feel that they know what's best to do with the resources. They feel that they know what's best to do with every resource, including your own labor, right? So they're going to tell you where you should, in the absolute dystopian sense of this word, they're going to tell you where you should work, how many kids you can have. They're going to test your genes. They're going to tell you, oh, you're not fit to have a kid, or you're going to be put into this, cleaning toilets position because, we just don't like whatever. You answered a question wrong on this questionnaire. You showed a little bit too much independent thought, so we're going to put you in the lowest position possible. Something like that. Like that sort of thing absolutely could happen without effort from people to keep it from happening, basically. So as we've kind of come around full circle here, we'll see that we'll review again, I guess, political power comes from groups of people that share the same status. This is why it seems like the states have no power, because all the people in the states are federal or are United States citizens. Another word for that would be federal citizen, I guess, but correct terminology is United States citizen or citizen of the United States. Imagine this, okay? All the people in all the states, they're all separate in that sense, that they all have allegiance to their state. But, of course, obviously, the states are already working together through the federal government, and they're enjoying it, and we're experiencing good prosperity and growth and everything, right? The status is created. The United States citizenship status is created. It's given to those that are being born, right? So everybody that was alive before the law happened, they're retaining their status. They don't see anything change. What changes is that the people that are now being born, they have the United States citizenship status. Okay, and that basically slid right under the radar for about 2 generations. Then, that was in 1868, okay? Approximately 2 generations later, maybe 3 if we're talking about the life expectancy back then. What happens? 1913 and the Federal Reserve Act. Okay, and then shortly after that, about a generation later, we have the Social Security Act and the absolute bankruptcy of the United States in 1933. So basically, all the government had to do after putting this law into place was just wait for those that had a de jure status to die off. And everybody that is coming into the fold, all the new people being born, they just don't really know the difference because they're born with the status. They're born with the mark, basically, and they just don't really understand the difference because at this point it's not very significant. Having a Social Security number or being a United States citizen up until this point really is not that significant. It only becomes extremely significant when the government starts taking out loans based on all the people being collateral. And they tabulate how many people they have. They look at the Social Security numbers and they say, hey, we've got all these people. Oh, I forgot to say the income tax was a big thing. The 16th Amendment happened very shortly. I'm not sure exactly when the 16th Amendment happened, but right around that same time, 16th Amendment came into play. And so then the government, imagine this, is saying, hey, look, we have all this property, and this property is working, and it's creating wealth. And we're going to take some of that wealth, we're going to skim off the top, and we're going to be able to skim off the top for the foreseeable future. Okay, so we have this, basically this sort of honeypot that we can go to all the time. What do? They say to international banks, which basically thrive on getting systems like this into debt, they say, let's take out some loans, let's take out some giant loans. Basically, that was the beginning of the sort of the trajectory that we see what's happening now. But anyway, so back to a little bit about the difference between maybe the people that are involved with state nationals versus people that are United States citizens. Obviously, a state national or a national of the state is going to really understand rights versus privileges. They're going to understand the order of nature versus the new order. They're going to understand what's legal and what's lawful, and they're going to know the difference between that stuff, and they're going to be able to stand on their rights because of a solid education on these topics. Now, on the other hand, we have the United States citizen. The United States citizen, basically, they don't put much effort into understanding this kind of stuff. They don't understand what privileges are versus rights. They don't understand that those privileges can be changed, suspended, or abolished for whatever reason at any time. And they often don't understand the law, and therefore they're just at the mercy of the system that's around them. So we want to, one thing I like to say a lot is People's Awareness Coalition wants to teach a man to fish, not to give a man a fish, okay? So what's the best way? How do we fix it? How do we fix the problem? Obviously, the problem being out of control federal government and honestly hordes and hordes of people that unknowingly are propping this whole thing up. What's the best way to fix it? Well, we've found that the best way to correct the current situation is to bring the power back to the states. You could call this kind of like the purest state rights movement that there is, really. The best way to correct the current situation is to bring the power back to the states as intended by the founders by correcting your status to that of a national of a state, which means renouncing citizenship to the United States government, which means it means pledging allegiance to a state, basically, thereby bringing political power back to the states and bringing the federal government back into its intended function. The People's Awareness Coalition is here to provide the remedy in the form of an actual administrative process, meaning paperwork. You're provided with paperwork. The paperwork is you review it, you analyze it, you critique it, you pour over it, and then you turn it in if you feel like, basically. People's Awareness Coalition is here to provide the remedy, but we need your help. It's been the mission of People's Awareness Coalition since 1998 to bring proper constitutional education and political awareness to all Americans. But in time it was realized that most Americans are not quite ready. And thus, the PAC Alliance was formed. All right. People's Awareness Coalition is looking for good people to move this vision forward, and those people who are looking to free America from its deception and assist those who truly want freedom. So a little bit about what PAC Alliance is. Basically, PAC Alliance is everybody that is interested in educating themselves, in research, in getting familiar with the subject matter that's contained in the book, the Red Amendment, and being basically part of the program that we have, and coming on conference calls and just participating in general. We need people to help spread the message, obviously, so that we can get this presentation into the hands of people that have somewhat of an understanding, so that they can introduce it to more people. Okay, and again, like, I made this presentation, and I'm going to keep editing it and everything, and eventually it's going to be given out to people that have like hubs across the country that are involved and trusted by People's Awareness Coalition, by the people that make up People's Awareness Coalition, with the intended goal of just educating more people and bringing more people into the fold and getting more people to understand that there is a remedy, that there's a way out, kind of, if you just totally disagree with the way that the government is and you just want to get out. Other people have different motives for wanting to do the process, because there are some benefits, but mainly it's about I think most of the people that are involved with PAC at this point now, that are true members of the PAC Alliance or true members of People's Awareness Coalition, it's more of a moral thing. It's not so much a getting out of paying taxes type thing. It's more about absolute land ownership, absolute property ownership, not having to, not having to worry all the time about, different things, about your rights being infringed upon and all that stuff. Now, obviously, strength comes in numbers, right? So being as People's Awareness Coalition right now is not boasting high numbers, we're not really ready to, bring any sort of legal fight to the front. Right now what we focus on is getting people to understand the knowledge, the material, get people to pass the material around, get people to contemplate it, critique it, to talk about it, to collaborate around it, and to just constantly refine what our approach is, to keep getting the message out and everything. And then eventually we want to keep spreading the idea and getting people on board to actually renounce their citizenship status from the United States, okay, and claim allegiance to a state, by doing that, then bringing the power back into the states. Okay, this seems like a very foreign, crazy thing to do to a lot of people nowadays. But the fact of the matter is, this is the way it was before, when America, United States, when the many states were coming up and they were becoming prosperous, and the growth of the middle class was, beginning, and slavery was kind of on its way out, and all this stuff. There was big changes happening in the world, and it was kind of United States, or this America. All the many states were kind of the epicenter of this monumental sort of change that was happening. And again, like I said, the way that it was that all the people were members of their states, and the states had a certain amount of autonomy and sovereignty, and the states had the ability to protect the people inside their states, inside their borders, or people that were members of their state. But at this point now, the federal government basically has a direct relationship with every individual, and the states, basically, they kind of try to wield some power, but they're very much, impotent or gelded at this point. Basically, back into the presentation, we're kind of wrapping up to the end of the presentation, but one of the last points is that People's Awareness Coalition is here to help, most of all. Again, we're a nonviolent group, and we want to just educate people and show people that there is an option. Obviously, they don't have to take that option, and some people might not be able to take that option. Some people might not, literally be able to remove themselves from the system because they've gotten themselves into a position where now they've depended on it for so long, they can't justify uncoupling from that system because maybe they're up in age and they're relying on that Social Security check or one of any other reason. Okay? Basically, that doesn't mean you can't help to spread the knowledge. That doesn't mean you can't be involved. Okay? So People's Awareness Coalition also has released a lot of information that can be found at pacinlaw.us. That's PAC, P-A-C, inlaw.us. Okay, that is kind of the main hub website for People's Awareness Coalition. There's papers that are written on that site, and they're found kind of like Easter eggs hidden around. But you got to click around, and you kind of got to get familiar with the site, and you'll find the papers. And they are sort of supplementary topics that kind of tie in to the main core message, which is basically the Red Amendment, which is the main book. And all these little papers, they kind of tie in, but they're obviously interesting to read even without having read the book. You can start your educational journey there with the assistance and consultation of PAC members at our Facebook group, Official PAC Alliance. Also, I can give out my email if anybody, wants to email, and we can, if you don't have social media or something, and obviously I have a friend on the call now that, he has my phone number, so, that person can text me whenever they feel like it. They actually don't have a Facebook and stuff, that's good. Something I haven't done. So even if you're not in a position to change your status, like I said, you can assist those that are. You can volunteer your time to assist with different projects. You can help basically as a study companion with somebody. You could say, hey, you're starting to read the book. Well, I'm starting to read the book too. Let's be accountability partners or something. Let meet somebody new by going through the book with somebody, and just kind of meeting once a week, maybe on the phone, and go over. I was only able to read a couple of pages this time, but blah blah blah. We'll talk about the principles and stuff. That kind of thing. You can volunteer your time to assist with different projects and know that you're contributing to a new, better future for all Americans. If you're ready to learn more, you can access the best information on the subject by getting a copy of the Red Amendment. I definitely highly suggest that everybody gets a copy of their own, of the Red Amendment. Again, the Red Amendment, basically red in the title, it refers to, it's a symbolic reference to communism. Communism is, in all aspects, is in some way and to some degree being used in the United States. Every plank or pillar or whatever they call it in the Communist Manifesto, every single one of them is in employment right now in the United States, and has been progressively kind of getting more and more into that, becoming more communistic. Okay, so that's what the red reference is. Okay, the Red Amendment basically references the stealthy implementation of communism into the American system using the 14th Amendment. Okay, and a lot of people like to say that the 14th Amendment was about freeing the slaves, but it did not free the slaves. It actually created a citizenship. It created a status. It put everybody into the same status, sure, and equal, right? That's the big goal in communism, right? Is equality for all people, right? It gave all people equal privileges. It gave all people equal immunities. It gave all people equal ability to, ask for permission. In essence, it didn't give everybody equal rights. Okay. Another thing it did, and later on in the book, this has gone over in depth, but the fourth section of the 14th Amendment mentions the public debt. It mentions the creation of the public debt, and that the public debt cannot be questioned. That was preempting, and I think absolutely premeditatedly, preempting the idea of creating debt to basically this perpetual debt cycle, right? Because that's actually one of the main aspects of communism too, is the perpetual debt and the central bank, that national bank or whatever. Okay, so this is all absolutely and totally in line with communism and world communism being the ultimate end game goal. Luckily, the United States, for all its faults and foibles, has been standing kind of in the way, given the fact that we do still have some sort of a resemblance in our culture of just how ferocious we were once in the past. The fact that we still are allowed to have guns, the fact that we still are allowed to presumably say what's on our mind at any time without threat of being imprisoned. Okay, as long as you're not acting violently or inciting violence, right? We still have the ability to have whatever religion we want, or to not have a religion at all, and so on and so on. So we do still have the resemblance of what all of our rights should be, but it's not in an absolute sense. Things can be taken away. Eventually, obviously the Second Amendment is a big deal to a lot of people. They've tried many, many times to erode that away. They've done a good job of kind of eroding it away a little bit at a time, but it's not totally gone. So, I mean, America is not totally dead, but it's getting there. Okay? And basically, we're here to sound the alarm, to stand up, to shout, and sound the alarm in a figurative, metaphorical sense. Try and get out there and tell people, hey, this is what's going on. We think this is a way to fix it. We found that this is a way to fix it. This is something that's working. It's actually being used, and it's working. It's being used right now by people. I am actually a de jure national of the state of Virginia. I've gone through the process. I used the PAC paperwork to go through the process. Of course, a lot of people will say, oh, you don't need to pay for PAC, right? But, okay, you don't need to take your car ever to a mechanic if you know how to do that stuff, right? You don't need to call a plumber if you know how to do that stuff. But, hey, a lot of people don't know how to do that stuff. So PAC is here to provide a service, obviously, to fill a need. And some people need that help. I guarantee that if you never bought a copy of the Red Amendment and you never wanted to go through with the PAC process and you never wanted to, associate with PAC for whatever reason, you could get through the process. But you're going to have an awful lot of questions that need to be answered that are absolutely answered, just by associating with people that are in PAC. A lot of people want to say, maybe talk down about the fact that, the book costs money or that the process costs money or whatever. But in actuality, once you start to get into this stuff, once you start to really read it, you start to realize, man, this stuff is interesting. I'm starting to understand it, but I'm nowhere near being able to navigate my way through it, on my own. So I did the process with PAC. I know other people that have gone through the process with PAC. It does work. And, People's Awareness Coalition has actually helped people to, stay back the IRS, to get money back from the IRS, to help people to be able to travel around, without having to actually get licensed and everything for commercial use of the roads and things, which is kind of like the popular way that people, travel. All these things have been worked out and we've got people that are doing this stuff now, so we've got more stuff to work on, but I think we're probably the furthest along of of all the different little patriot groups that are out there right now. I never mentioned, I guess, throughout the presentation that you can press *2 at any time to raise your hand. If you have a question, you can press *2. I should have said that maybe a couple times throughout the presentation, so in case, something came up while I was going through, you can just press *2 and raise your hand right then. But in any case, you can press *2 now. You can raise your hand and just introduce yourself and give a comment. You can ask a question or whatever. Look, I'll try and do the best I can to answer it. And I have Frank on the line, too.
I'd just like to add something to this. You had brought it up early on in the call about what the 14th Amendment did through its operations of law by creating this U.S. citizenship status. There's a paper, a good write-up on it. You can type in pacinlaw.us/establishment, and that's a well-written article on this dilemma, and it goes over and it kind of breaks everything down, the insurgency, rebellion, the occupation, talks about possession, adverse possession, and then the establishment. It's sort of in detail, more in detail of this presentation of sort, and there's several additional links on it that you can click, and it'll take you to a whole other section. And each of these links have links in them that bring you to more of these white papers. And like you
said, that was pacinlaw.us/establishment?
Yes.
Okay.
pacinlaw.us/establishment. There's another one. I believe it's pacinlaw.us/deprogramming sequence, or deprogramming. You can type in deprogramming, and that'll come up too. And that's about an hour presentation. You can do it in the privacy of your own home if you have a headset or speakers on your computer. You don't necessarily have to have speakers. It's got a background sort of music that kind of goes along with it, but it's sort of set up kind of like the way the Matrix, the movie, kind of goes, and it.
Yeah, a lot of the animations and the theme of the entire
the White Rabbit and Follow Trinity and this and that, and it kind of breaks it down a little bit more in detail. I recommend that if you haven't gone through that.
Yeah, because you can obviously take as much time as you want to read through each frame and just really digest it and stuff. Yeah.
Right, and there's footnotes on every page. There's a footnotes for in the text that you can click on, and it backs it up whatever source material that was gathered to put it together. It's all verifiable. It's not based in opinion. It's all based in law. So, and it kind of helps explain things a little more clearly, because trying to get it all in an hour presentation is, very difficult. I kind of recommend it on Facebook for a lot of folks, because trying to explain something, a subject in a comment thread is,
oh God, it's like torture to yourself.
Oh, it is, and then people they want to be coddled, they want to be babysat, and, they want you to hold their hand through the whole thing, and that's not what this is.
And answer all their questions right then and there, and it's just like, take a little bit of time to read, and you'll probably have a bunch of other questions, but at least you'll be able to answer the really easy ones on your own.
Right. A lot of them will be answered for that. So, and then if you need to get a copy of the Red Amendment, you can get a hold of myself, Frank Helderline, on Facebook, or Levi Fishbone Charlton on Facebook, or
also I can give out my my email. For anybody that may not have Facebook, all you got to do is just press *2 and raise your hand. And if I see anybody's hand go up, I'll just say what my email is, and you can write it down.
Right, and we can. They also have David posted here, redamendment.net. You can go there and you can purchase a copy.
Those are the new copies of the 2016 version, which has been a glossary has been added for terms, for definitions on terms and things, and probably a footnotes and other things.
And the other link was deprogram.us. That's the link for the deprogramming sequence. And if you don't have a fast computer, or you have one that's a little older computer, there's a PDF version of it. It's not quite as intense, and it's all text. So, but that's a good one for you to read as a preliminary. And again, just search on go to the website and start clicking on those links. There's at least 150 separate write-ups, and they all tie into the Red Amendment. They all tie into the 14th Amendment, and about what Levi has discussed in this call. So
and there's a lot, and then also, so there's so much information between pacandlaw.us, and then you've got deprogram.us, and you've got those, but then you've also got the forum, right?
Right, that's right. It's the open forum. If you're not a PAC Alliance member, you can go to pacalliance.us/forum, and you can sign up for the forum, and it's just an open forum. You can comment on other posts, or you can make your own posts. You can ask questions there. And
PAC Alliance, wasn't it pacalliance.groups?
That's it, pacalliance.us/groups.
Okay, pacalliance.us/groups. Gotcha. I just wanted to put that in the chat too, just so everybody that's on the internet anyway. Those that are calling in can also write that stuff down. We said it a bunch of times.
Something else to notate is that
David, the forum accounts. Yeah, the forum accounts there's been a lot of forum accounts that have been backed up and waiting for approval, and that basically I think has to do with maybe a broken computer. That all those emails and everything are kind of getting cycled into an email, and the login information and stuff, I guess, is on this computer. I'm not sure exactly what the full story is, but that's getting worked out. Yeah, I know that's been a long time to have to be waiting to get onto the account.
And if you want to go on the to the website and you want to kind of have an idea of what's there, you can go to the PAC Alliance homepage, which is pacalliance.us/home, and it's got a whole bunch of links on it, different areas of interest. Also on the website, on the left-hand side of the page, there's little pop-outs. You just put your mouse over it and it pops out, and there's contact information and ordering information and the unification project, introduction, the broadcast team, treason by design.
Hey, Frank, real quick, with regard to the forum accounts getting approval and stuff, how much closer are we now to that actually being something that can happen, like within a matter of days versus having to wait for a really long time?
I'm not sure. I'd have to get a hold of LB on that. He's
okay.
Sort of
yeah, I know that was like an issue we were talking about maybe 2 months ago or something, and we really, we're talking about we need to figure that out. So.
Right. I'll get with him and we'll get that figured out. We'll get that sorted out.
We've got a lot of things going on right now. So right now I'm doing PowerPoint presentations for basically every chapter in the book. I'm also going to be editing the introductory presentation. Then we've also got a handbook, I guess, that's being created by John and probably with the assistance of one or more of his friends.
John and I and Michelle were originally working on that. We've had some input from several of the other PAC Alliance members and some of the state nationals.
Yes, John just posted a link to pacalliance.us/14th.
That's a good one.
Yeah, pacalliance.us/14th again. So we've got these different programs going on, but then we've also got the levels, the structuring of the levels is being kind of tweaked a little bit, and there's going to be actually a lot more solid, materials that are going to be handed out with each of the different levels. Like we're going to be getting our hands on things like the state constitution for the state that you are in. If you sign up for level 2 and you're in Iowa or something, we're going to provide the state constitutions that go back to the to prior to Reconstruction, if possible. Then other supplementary reading materials like Federalist Papers, the Communist Manifesto, and other things like that are materials that are really good to go over in the self-study phase, which would be the level 1 phase. And then that would couple with the discussions that would happen on the forum, on the level 1 forum, so that everybody that's at that level would really be kind of privy to all the same information, and they would all be able to share their opinions and analyze that stuff and critique it together. And then level 2 and beyond, all the way up until basically I think level 4, or I think we're calling it maybe level 5 now, which is going to be the actual process of going through with the paperwork and all that stuff.
Right.
So right now we've got a team of people that are all working on different aspects of this at the same time, and we're going to kind of come together hopefully soon and really have like a lot more infrastructure in place to get people going on track. So is there anything else that you wanted to add in, Frank?
No, that was it. Just the links I had mentioned.
Okay.
And if you don't have a red amendment, I can't tell you how much I encourage you to get one.
Right, and I don't know if I mentioned, but and I think you, Frank, also we have books for half price. Mine are the outdated version. Mine are the 2012 version, and I'm selling them for $30. But the up-to-date version, which includes more material and a glossary and all that stuff, can be found at redamendment.net, and I believe it's $59.
Right, and I can do those for with shipping for $40 for the ones I have. I think Jason has a few copies. Gabe has a few copies. Yep. Yeah, and Gabe says he's got them for $30. So
okay.
That's a pretty good deal.
Absolutely.
I just do it to cover the shipping.
Cool. Yeah, and again, once you get the book, then it's kind of for me, it was like a huge eye opener. It really answered a lot of questions for me. Also, of course, it brought up a lot more questions. But the most important thing was that it felt like it got me, 50 steps further in my understanding of this entire thing. And Peter, I will definitely hook you up with a book. I'll work a way to meet up and stuff, since we're pretty local to each other. and we can get that going on. It's really important to get the book, to read it, to try and understand it all, and of course, like to talk to other people about it, just to gain a better understanding about it. I mean, when I first got the book, I was like, wow, this is crazy. There's a lot of this stuff is crazy. I have an uncle who's really interested in politics and everything, and I brought it to him, and I asked him about his opinion about it and everything, and I don't think he really read it because he never really got back to me with anything solid. He never told me really like if he thought anything about it really at all. But he's probably just very kind of ingrained in his ways and stuff. And, bless him anyway. But hopefully one day he'll turn around and read it.
Right, and that's the thing is when you get it, don't let it collect dust. Read it. Yeah, definitely. I think I've probably handed out a few copies of this, and then I don't know if people actually end up even getting into them. Well, it's sort of out of the realm of just the normal mainstream type reading, so it can be a little intimidating at first, but you'll get through it.
Yeah, and also once you start to get into reading like legal stuff, legal speak, and really understanding nuances and splitting hairs with terms and stuff, then it kind of becomes second nature to you. You start to really become more critical thinking, and you start to get the hang of it. So that's something that's important to do for sure.
Does anybody have any questions? You can just
anybody want to ask a question?
Comment.
Press *2. Comments or questions? Yeah, *2. Or if you're on the internet, then you can press the lines in the top of your avatar. You can press the 3 lines in the top of your box, and then there's a drop-down menu that you'll see that has raise hand in there. If nobody has any real questions right now, then I guess we'll just kind of draw this one to a close.
Okay, that sounds good. I don't see any hands up.
I'm really glad with all the people that came on here tonight. I really want to just say thanks for coming on, and I hope to see you on here maybe next week. Maybe you can invite some other friends on. People's Awareness Coalition is more now than it's ever been before, and it's definitely growing, and it's definitely going somewhere now. It's not just LD. There's a lot of people involved now, and people that are serious, and they're definitely trying to make something happen. So we're on it, and we're trying to do something great. So I'm glad to have you here again. Oh, we do have someone's hand up. All right, let's go here.
That's Nicholas, I think.
Hi, Nicholas.
Hi, does it say 702?
It does.
Okay, I'm used to Skype showing up as either unknown or private number, so this is the first conference call that I've been told there's an area code associated with me, but that's fine.
It'll say like a prefix and then stars for the rest of the number.
Yeah. What are which state has the most state nationals with PAC?
If I was to guess, I think it's probably Colorado, actually.
Okay.
I heard that there's an awful lot of people in Colorado that corrected their nationality, but that was a few years ago. That was maybe actually more than a few years ago. And then I know that there was a project where there was an attempt to correct the status of a bunch of different people in Texas, kind of all at one time. I'm not exactly sure how that turned out because that was being kind of led up by a gentleman that's no longer really affiliated with PAC. He's kind of become somewhat adversarial towards PAC. So I don't really want to kind of like get too much into like bashing or anything, but I think that that attempt may have been a failure. But I'm not exactly totally sure on everything that happened with that. I think that one of the main sort of issues that was going on there was just conflict between ideologies. I think that the gentleman was maybe a little bit, out for his self-aggrandizement a little bit. I don't know. I'm not trying to get too much into that because that's sort of like that's just a counterproductive point. But to answer the question, I really think it was Colorado.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was in Colorado. There was about 20-something or 25 or something folks that did it. But, life happens, and, some people have things that come up, tragedies, divorces, whatever. And so things happen, and then things get spread out. And they just didn't keep in touch. They didn't, the communication. And that's the point, here at the unity of PAC. We have to keep the communication lines open. The part about the fellow in Texas was the people weren't really prepared. They hadn't read the book. They hadn't. Some of them did, but there was quite a few that hadn't, and it was sort of an impromptu type jump. Just take the leap.
So they were kind of like putting the cart before the horse a little bit, maybe trying to rush.
Part of them were, and part of them just didn't qualify. They just weren't the right type. Some of them were attempting to, skirt the law, or so to speak. Try to get out of certain obligations.
Yeah, that seems to be an issue. Some unscrupulous people want to kind of use our materials and our principles, maybe parts of the process and stuff, to kind of get at their own end game, which most of the time is going to be to try and get around paying taxes, or to try and, maybe drive when they don't deserve to drive because they got caught with DUI a couple times or something, and now they don't have a license, and now they want to try and find a way, some sort of legal loophole around their punishment or something. And that's, that's just basically, unscrupulous types trying to make the information, kind of use it for their own bad purposes.
Right. Okay.
Go ahead, Nicholas.
Yeah. So that's why we do try and keep some of the stuff close to the chest, as far as how we do some of the finer points, life after nationality change and stuff, because we don't want to advertise that stuff and put it out there and have somebody basically use sort of like end game parts of the process when they don't really understand the beginning of the game, and just totally make everybody look bad and cause a big problem for everyone else.
Right. Okay, well, part 2 of the PAC interview with Christian Revolt, Long Overdue, is this Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern on LibertyWorksRadioNetwork.com.
LibertyWorksRadioNetwork.com, 4 p.m. Eastern on Friday. Yep. That's going to be good. And actually, the past episode, I believe the past episode that you guys did is on the Facebook, or not on the Facebook, on the YouTube account that we were mentioning earlier. It would be Gabe Halo. I believe that it's there.
Right.
And,
yeah, Gabe posted it.
Yes. Okay, great. So Gabe posted that, and then he's going to be posting the next one, and we're going to kind of have a compilation of all the audio media that we're doing on Gabe's YouTube. So we thank Gabe for that.
And Nicholas, if you'll Skype me your address, I'll make sure you get you that your copy of TRA.
Will do. Thanks.
All right. Well, does anybody have any other questions, comments, or anything like that? Press *2 or raise your hand in the interface on the internet. If nobody does, then I'll go ahead and just again say thank you to everybody that came on the call tonight, and I hope to see you here next week. We always talk about sort of different little things here and there in the side conversations among the main general presentation. So on that note, I'll go ahead and say good night. Bless all of y'all, and I'll see you next week. Good night.
Good night.
Your line has been disconnected by the moderator. Goodbye.